Hello, and welcome to episode 21 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. We're here today with Ken Hartman, who is the director of the Bethesda Regional Services Center in Montgomery County, Maryland. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Jordan.
So the first question I'd like to ask you is, what are you currently doing, or what have you ever done to advance the public interest, and why?
Well, the purpose of my job is to advance the public interest in my part of the county, which includes Rockville, Potomac, Bethesda, Chevy Chase. I fill the gaps between what is provided and what's not, helping to identify new services and working with the community and stakeholders to make that happen. I guess a prime example of what I've done or what I'm working on, years ago, a group of residents wanted to create what was called villages, grassroots aging in place organizations based in neighborhoods that help neighbors age in their community, stay connected with their neighbors, and stay active mentally and physically. These people came to me and they had no idea what county services were available to them, so I connected them to those services. They also had a game plan, an idea of what they wanted to accomplish, and I helped them think it through. I helped them organize, become 501c3 nonprofits, and identify and address the many, many challenges that a startup 501c3 has to face. Along with that, we also worked with them to create a manual of best practices, what I like to call the Village Blueprint, which was a document that, with the help of volunteers and these villages, we were able to compile. It was placed online and in public libraries, and we've given away, people have downloaded more than 10,000 copies. So that was an example of where there was a clear need for something, a service. Ended up not being a service that the government provided, but it was something that we were able to add value to provide expertise and information, and really bringing people together to solve very, very basic issues. The purpose of the blueprint was to then take those experiences and provide them forward.
So is it fair to say that in some respects you are an ombudsman to county government for local residents?
Part of my job is being that ombudsman, that connection between communities and government. The other part of my job is working with organizations like the Bethesda Urban Partnership and a fledgling organization up in the Pike District, the White Flint Downtown Advisory Committee, to help create these sort of community-based organizations that will later provide services. In Bethesda's case, the Bethesda Urban Partnership was created by a group of citizens and businesses who got together many years ago, who wanted to control and direct how Bethesda was managed and how Bethesda was promoted. And the result of that is the Urban Partnership. And that's the sort of effort we're also trying to replicate up in the Pike District.
So the Bethesda Urban Partnership is somewhat of a town council or a city council, if you will, for Bethesda.
Ideally, yeah, that's what it is. Although Bethesda Urban Partnership stays away from the politics. They are here to promote and maintain Bethesda, and it's very, very hard to promote and maintain Bethesda when you're involved on a political level. They are involved in more of a operational level, making sure that when things need to be fixed or maintained, there's an organization closer to the community that helps close that loop faster than, say, going to Rockville and phoning in a 311 complaint.
So when I think of you, I think 7 in the morning to late at night meetings and at 9:30 in the evening. You're always providing support to different boards. You're going out to community meetings. You're ensuring that different things, the trains run on time and county services are provided. You seem to be everywhere, and you're kind of the man behind Bethesda. How do residents react to you? Are you known in the community as a politician would be? You're kind of like the unofficial mayor in a way. I don't know if you've ever heard yourself described that way. How do you feel like you're perceived in the community?
I think I'm much less visible than a mayor. I'm not elected. We have our elected officials who are even more attuned to the needs of the community, and people in the community they call me, they'll call 311, they'll call the county exec's office, they'll call the county council members for service needs, and we all work together. I think my job is when there are those complicated issues, when people can't resolve a problem through 311, or when there is a need that doesn't fit the box, that's where I come in.
And why are you better able to address their needs than constituents? What are you able to do, and how are you able to find answers to those problems that citizens themselves aren't able to?
One, I'm inside county government, and not just inside. I'm appointed by the county executive, so I have a degree of seniority within county government, so I can work with our department directors and our county exec staff to affect change and to address problems and bringing people together from across different agencies, across different silos. I also have this natural desire to solve problems. Much of what you do in your work life is reflected in your personality and in your home life. I was 6 of 7 children, so I wasn't necessarily the first person to say something or the loudest, but when I did say something, it was after listening to the different points of view and coming up with what I felt was the best solution. So I think that's my greatest strength, is that I can listen, and I have this desire to solve problems.
So you're almost raised to be a convener.
Yeah, I think birth order is very powerful, and the personality you're born with is another factor. Having 2 kids, you really do see from the moment they're born, most of their personality is already there.
So, well, how do you balance all of your many responsibilities with the county with fatherhood?
When I took this job 8 years ago, I promised my wife I'd be home for dinner every single night, and with a few occasions, with plenty of advance warning, I've kept that promise. I live a couple miles from work, so that makes it very, very convenient to run home for dinner before running back out for evening meetings.
So if you have a 7 to 9 p.m. CAB meeting, which for our listeners means a Western Montgomery County Citizens Advisory Board meeting from 7 to 9 p.m., you've already left work at 5, gone home, had dinner, and come back. Is that?
But yeah, it's fair to say I try to do that whenever I can.
Interesting. So, how do you get to be the regional services director? And well, why? I guess you mentioned a little bit that it was your personality that drove you not to seek public office, but to serve the public in an appointed way. But I guess tell me a little bit your path from high school to college on. Are you from Bethesda? How did you choose this career path? How did you get here?
I grew up in Montgomery County. I went to Magruder High School. After that, I went to the University of Maryland and studied government and politics and economics. After that, I kind of fell into this job. It was a good friend of mine who knew of someone who was looking for an intern, and I ended up working for council member Betty Ann Cronky. I think I discovered then that I enjoyed working for county government. Local government's much closer to the people. You can actually see the results of your work within a short order. You don't have to wait 10 to 15 years in a federal situation to see your work be useful. After that, I went to work for the city of Rockville for a number of years, being frontline outreach coordinator for capital projects. So anything that the city used a shovel for, I was out working with the community early. And on the flip side, I was working with city staff to make sure they were, when they were developing their project, that they were working with the community to articulate why it was important that work be done, and solicit the community's expertise on how to improve the project so that when it was done, the impacts were less than they would have been otherwise.
And that was the city of Rockville.
That was the city of Rockville. And when I was at the city, I started going back to school. I went to night school at Virginia Tech, where I received my master's in public administration.
Surely you didn't commute from Bethesda down to Roanoke every day.
Virginia Tech has a wonderful program here in Northern Virginia where they bring the same professors as who teach down in Blacksburg up to Northern Virginia. And so the program and the diploma is identical to the program and diploma you receive down in Blacksburg.
Huh.
It's a fantastic program, and Virginia Tech is very well regarded public management school.
Huh.
After that, I worked for back to the county council as an analyst, meaning I had a portfolio of issues that I staffed for the county council, and then one day I was called up to Councilmember Howie Dennis's office by his confidential aide. I sat down in front of Mr. Dennis, and he explained that he was looking for a new chief of staff and felt I would be ideal. And that's when I took that job. And after that, when this job came available, I applied for it with Mr. Leggett and his staff, and I was selected for this position.
Interesting. So it seems like a steady progression, starting at the lowest level, which is an unpaid intern, to progressively getting more education, becoming a staffer for the Montgomery County Council, then becoming a chief of staff, and eventually becoming the director of one of, is it 5 regional services centers,
5 centers, yes.
in Montgomery County? And of course, Montgomery County has a population of 1 million people.
Right, and my regional area has a population of 280,000.
Oh, so you have even more than your fifth.
Yeah.
You have more than a quarter of the county population that you're responsible for. And, would you say you put in more than 40 hours a week?
I would say that's I don't even count, but I would say that's clearly the case. And my iPad and iPhone are buzzing around the clock.
You're on call 24/7. You show up at the Pike District Fall Fest on Saturday morning, afternoon. You're always showing up at events throughout the 7 days a week. It's almost as though you are a politician without being political.
Well, again, it's from more of a management role. A politician in a legislative branch has to rely on executive branch staff to close the loop with constituents, to come around to their point of view and to see things from their perspective. I work directly with executive branch staff. I stay out of politics. That's Mr. Leggett's job. My job is...
Mr. Leggett, to our listeners, by the way, is the Montgomery County Executive.
And he's the one who appointed me to this position. My job is to do those quiet victories, unsung behind closed doors, where that create real change and quality of life for our residents.
Do you feel like you are ever publicly acknowledged or appreciated as a politician would be?
No, and that's not my job. You mentioned the Pike District event a few weeks ago. Someone asked me if I wanted to be in the ribbon cutting photo, and I don't need to be in that ribbon cutting photo. My boss was in that photo, and that's what matters.
Interesting. So, does the idea that what you've chosen to do as your career, that fits into a bucket of public service, does that resonate?
Oh yeah, I think public service is a very noble cause. It's working for your neighbors in respect to improve their neighborhoods, to address challenges that you yourself see as you go around your average day. I think that resonates quite a bit with me. So,
talk to me a little bit about the various boards that you work with. You mentioned 3. There's the CAB. There's the White Flint Downtown Advisory Committee. There's the Bethesda Urban Partnership. Are there any others that you work with? Well, let's start with that. Are there any others that you work with?
Oh yes, I'm on the board of directors for Bethesda Green, which is a nonprofit in Bethesda seeking to promote sustainability and environmental best practices. I'm on the board of directors for the Glen Echo Park Partnership down in Glen Echo. They manage Glen Echo Park on behalf of Montgomery County. I'm on the Suburban Hospital Community Benefit Council, which is the body that advises Suburban Hospital's leadership on programs that benefit the community. And there are a number of other boards and committees that I belong to. I'm all transportation management district boards in my area, and currently not work-related, but somewhat work-related. I'm president of the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rotary Club.
So, how do you find, could you talk a little bit about the differences between being kind of the public leader of an organization, like the president of the Rotary Club, or actually being a board member yourself for Suburban Hospital versus being the support staff for the CAB and BUP and the Whitefield Downtown Advisory Committee?
It's amazing, and sometimes I have to remind myself what role I'm fulfilling within whatever board I'm sitting on. I think being staff is rewarding because you get to help make others' perspective become reality, and certainly with the Pike District, that's been the case. Although in my role there is I'm both a member and the staff. So that's been quite challenging to give up a Saturday to help manage a street festival is something that staff, of course, has to do. But it was also something that I love doing because I was a member of the committee, and it helps move the committee's agenda forward.
And many of the committee members themselves were present at the thing. So it's both staff. Okay, so you're regularly called upon to shift between your backseat role and the more public role.
Yeah, and even in other boards of directors, say Glen Echo Park, I'm also called upon because I represent the county executive. And right now we're going through a renegotiation of the agreement that the county has with the National Park Service. So of course I have a much greater role than, say, a regular board member would have.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So you're doing a lot for the community. There's these senior villages. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of some fun stories or challenges that you've experienced on the job?
Well,
What's rewarding for you?
Well, what's rewarding, one of the things that's been rewarding, aside from everything else we've talked about, I also manage a place in Bethesda. We're sitting in the Bethesda Chevy Chase Regional Services Center, which is an actual facility. We have 20,000 square feet. And in this building, we have daycare and my offices. And when I came into this job 8 years ago, this building was mostly unused. It was unused and unknown, and I managed to create relationships with various nonprofits in our area, from theater groups to senior serving organizations to Suburban Hospital to the Conflict Resolution Center. And many of these organizations now reside here or provide services here. So we went from barely anyone coming in the door to now close to 40,000 visits in a calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So just that small thing, taking something that a public asset that was barely used to something that's heavily used has been very, very rewarding, and it's been fun.
So we're nearing the end of our podcast, and I'd just like to wrap up by asking you to reflect upon your many years of public service and all that you give of yourself in order to improve the community, and just ask you to reflect on your motivations and why it is that you have spent your life and continue to spend your life giving so much more of yourself than is absolutely necessary just to make ends meet for your family. You give so much of yourself to improve the community. Just like to ask you why.
I think I take great pride in my community. I live here in Bethesda, and like most people, I'm concerned about not just my neighbors and my neighborhood, but about the quality of life in Montgomery County. And I think this position has allowed me to have an impact on all of the different services and all of the different organizations that serve the people of all incomes, of all ages. And I think that's been very, very rewarding to do so in a way that's maybe I'm not the one in front of the camera every single night, but it's cool to, at the end of the day, see something that you had a hand in fixing or creating.
So that's Ken Hartman, and basically, he says, I give a lot to the community because it's intrinsically rewarding. And even though it's public service, I find that serving a community in which I feel a part, and where I belong, where it's my community and I have ownership of this community, is very rewarding. And I enjoy going out there and helping people, and he can see the results of his efforts, and knowing that you can make a difference for Mr. Hartman is a great motivator for public service. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been episode 21 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.